Hello, I am S.K. Williams, and today I would like to talk to you about my approach to religion. I discuss militant atheism a lot on my channel. Militant atheism is not simply being an atheist, it is about attacking theism. Generally, we say that militant atheists attack religion. In truth, they have made a religion out of their beliefs, but they insist that being an atheist means you can't have a religion. They also focus mainly on Christianity and say things like the Bible is a book of Bronze Age myths, the Bible is a book of fairy tales, look how awful Christians have been, Crusades and Inquisition, but the Bible supports slavery, the God of the Bible is a monster, he's a sky fairy, he's a sky wizard, they will refer to God as people's imaginary friend, and so forth. They like to demean people who, using their terminology, follow religion. But they aren't really the topic of this video. However, I do owe them a bit of a debt in making this video. Granted, I've thought about making a video like this for a long time, and have in the past. But what really got me thinking about it was reading over John Loftus's Outsider's Test of Faith. Now, before people accuse me of straw-manning his argument, keep in mind, this video is not about the Outsider's Test of Faith. I'm only explaining how I came to the decision to make this video based upon it. Having said that, and to paraphrase and perhaps oversimplify, the Outsider's Test of Faith sounds reasonable on the surface. John Loftus asks you to submit your religion to the same standards that you apply to everyone else's religion. However, at the core of John Loftus's Outsider's Test of Faith is the assumption that you don't already do this. That you have a certain standard when evaluating the truthfulness of other religions that you simply do not apply to your own. Indeed, this is exactly what John Loftus asks. He asks why you don't apply the same standard to your religion as you do all the religions you reject. And I want to emphasize the word reject. That is the word John Loftus uses, reject. And he mainly talks to Christians. If you go to his blog, it is actually called Debunking Christianity, and he is really just attacking Christians. But what he's basically saying is that, as a Christian, I reject every religion in the world, and I do so based upon a standard in which I use science and evidence and reason to realize those religions are false. But I don't apply that standard to my own religion, keeping it removed from the same criticism. The problem with this is that it assumes that you don't apply the same standard to your own religion as you do all others. And indeed, if you read John Loftus's blog, he will outright state that you never really took the Outsider's Test of Faith if you come to the conclusion that your religion follows it, or passes the Outsider's Test. It's obvious that the Outsider's Test of Faith is more of a propaganda tool than a real method for analyzing religion, but it dawned on me that I simply can't take the Outsider's Test of Faith. It is a literal impossibility for me to do so without fundamentally changing my approach to religion. You see, John Loftus assumes that because I'm a Christian, I reject every religion in the world other than Christianity. But what does it mean to reject them? Loftus would say this is a rather easy thing, and that I'm just being a typical Christian apologist by trying to dilute things, but that's not it. We tend to treat religions as these packages that you must accept all of or reject all of, but that's not really what religion is. If it were, you would never have permutations of religion, which, incidentally, also cause problems to other atheist arguments, but that's not the point. The point is, it really isn't true that religions are these single, unified, homogeneous masses. And it's also not really true that simply not being part of that religion means you've rejected it. You see, rejection assumes a deliberate act of denying it or discarding it. Most people don't actively reject other religions, though. And the type of Christian that John Loftus is referring to, the one that is born and raised Christian and never questions it, also doesn't question other religions. I've mentioned this in a previous video. They're not going to be able to use the same method that they use to determine other religions are false and to reject them on their own because they have no such method. They simply accept Christianity because they are Christian, and they really just don't think about other religions. But people like me do really think about religion, and really do think about our beliefs. However, I still don't actually reject all of the world's religions but my own. And I certainly don't have this one unified method which I use, which employs science and logic and evidence to reject all of the world's religions that I actually can apply to my own religion. And it is precisely because I don't view religion as single objects that you either accept or reject. Religions, in truth, are a collection of claims. They are not single claims. While some claims do rely upon other claims, others do not. For example, if you have a religion that teaches you that you should give to the poor, this can be believed in without believing that there is a god named Vikari whom you must appease, or else he will smite you and your family. And that the god Vikari is at constant war with the god Ashi, who wishes to destroy all. And that all of them are kept in check by the god Takaba. You can accept the you should be kind to the poor and help the poor part without rejecting the other parts. And that's just speaking about the broad generalities. The truth of the matter is, even though our culture makes a distinction between religion and philosophy, there really is no distinction between the two. And one can embrace a philosophical perspective whilst rejecting another philosophical perspective the philosopher who originated it also accepted. For example, I can accept materialism whilst rejecting Marxism. Marxism, as a philosophy, is inherently rooted in dialectic materialism. If you reject materialism, then you must reject dialectic materialism, which means you must reject Marxism. But on the other hand, you can believe in materialism without believing in Marxism. Furthermore, you can actually have a philosophy like Marxism, which you actually agree with parts of, but not all of. The atheist community that I'm speaking to, the militant atheists, for example, have sometimes brought up liberation theology. And they do this in the context of people pointing out that Marxism is inherently atheistic. By bringing up liberation theology, which is an effort to merge Marxist concepts with Christianity, and to understand Christianity in the context of social revolution, you prove that Marxism is not inherently atheistic. At least, they think that. But it really doesn't. All it proves is that you can take concepts from Marxism and make them work within a new context. But liberation theology is not really Marxism. It may have been derived from Marxism, but it is not Marxism. In much the same way that if you took Christianity and decided to completely remove Jesus, at least in terms of referencing him, but kept the Sermon on the Mount and the general teachings of Jesus, while simultaneously merging them with atheism and materialism, you could attempt to call this Christianity, but it simply isn't. It is a religion that is motivated and inspired and derived from Christianity, but it is not Christianity. And this has actually already happened. It was called humanism. The first Humanist Manifesto, for instance, was written along those lines, and the National Secular Hall honored Jesus as a great moral teacher and great philosopher. Now, today it's more popular to trash him, but that kind of speaks for what I'm saying. Humanism directly grew out of Christianity. Modern atheists that follow humanist ideas sometimes like claiming that they are simply flat rejecting anything Christianity had, and that Christianity gave little to no good to the world. But the original humanists of the late 19th century, who didn't call themselves that yet, but they did exist in principle, didn't understand Christianity in those terms. And therein lies the problem. I don't sit about rejecting other world religions. I actually think that every religion grew out of a certain historical and cultural context, and that religious belief actually created the cultural context to which religion eventually evolves in. Without religion, you simply don't have a culture, and without a culture, religion cannot thrive. It's like a plant that, once you put the seed in the ground, begins to manipulate the soil so that it is better for itself. But at the same time, every belief that is held within the context of religion emerged from the world that people actually lived in. Religion isn't arbitrary, and it's not invented and made up on the spot. Religion is ultimately built from observing the world we're in and thinking about it. As much as the atheist community would like to deny this, it is ultimately the truth. Religious beliefs begin by observing the world and thinking about what works and what doesn't, what brings social unity and what doesn't, what improves my personal lot in life and what doesn't. How does the world work? Religion provides answers, and the atheist community would agree with that, but they say the answers religion provides are wrong. We should turn to science instead, as if this is a battle between science and religion, and it simply isn't. Indeed, those scientific explanations become religious once you do that. But that's what I'm getting at. When I read about Hinduism, I ask, why do they believe this? Not, why do they believe this entire religion, but this specific belief they hold. And I'm not saying that in the sense of, look how absurd and ridiculous these people are for believing this nonsense. This is objective idiocy. How stupid can they be? What I'm actually asking is literally, why do they believe this? Generally, if you do enough research, you find out why. You discover answers for why certain groups want you to wear head coverings, or why certain groups want you to abstain from certain foods. There are answers as to why these things happened. When I study religions, I want to understand why the belief came about. And the belief always emerges from either a historical or cultural perspective, or from an observation of the real world. So, I don't really reject all of the world's religions. As C.S. Lewis said, to be a Christian doesn't mean that you must believe all of the other religions in the world are completely false. You simply have to disagree with the parts that contradict Christianity. As such, I have no reason to reject everything a Taoist has to say, or everything a Hindu has to say, and I'm speaking religiously. I can actually find wisdom in Hinduism. I can find wisdom in Taoism. And the Taoist and the Hindu can find wisdom in the Bible and in Christianity. As can the Muslim. Understanding, even from a secular perspective, why certain things were written a certain way broadens our perspective. But the outsider's test of faith wants to restrict and narrow it. Rather than just rejecting all religions but my own, I, in some ways, accept them. I'm not a relativist. I don't think all religions are equally true. But I also don't believe all religions are false but my own. And that's why I made this video. Because I really can't take the outsider's test of faith. I don't really like the way this video went, so I'll make another one. I may or may not release this one though, but if I did, there's probably another one out there, with much the same point. Nevertheless, I think I've said my piece on the topic. I shall take my leave now. Thank you. God bless. And goodbye.